Hello and welcome back to Friday Minis. Now, today let's take a look at something that is a little bit more historical. It's not really done a lot these days in programming. But yeah, back then it was, well, an interesting workaround. Here's the deal. When you're using a language like C or C++, you could only ever return one thing from a function. That is, if you wanted to write a sum function, it would look something like this. Right, you want to get two numbers, you add them together, and you returned the value. That is fine. But if you wanted to return more than one value, you're out of luck because you could only ever return one value. Of course, you could return an array, but that's a little bit outside the scope of what we're going to be talking about today, which is an interesting workaround that doesn't actually have to be applied in the context of returning multiple things. In fact, later on, we're just going to give back one item, again using back our sum example, but we will be using this method instead. So here's how it works. Instead of using return, what you did was you passed the variable that you wanted to use to hold the answer to the function. So you're passing it in as a parameter, and what the function does is it takes in that value and it directly pokes into it and changes its actual value. So instead of returning something, you give it a variable to change up and fill in the answer there. The code itself looks something like this, right? So we are still using our sum example, but this time it's void. It doesn't actually return anything. Instead, you give it your two values and an additional variable to hold the answer. Notice, of course, this star over here, right? That actually means it is a pointer. What we're going to do is we're going to say we want to follow this pointer to whatever variable that is indicated there, and we want to store the answer of a plus b at that location. The answer of the calculation goes back out into the real world, but not via a return statement. So here's how we use the function inside of main. Essentially, we need to create our variable first, and that is where the answer will eventually end up. Of course, at this point, it's not in there yet, so we set it to 0. Then we call the sum function. In this case, we want to add 3 and 5, and we actually give it the address of our answer variable. So that's what this ampersand means, right? Instead of, just copying the value in, give it the address instead. What the function then does is it gets the address, it does the summation, and it stores the answer at the indicated address. At the end of the day, when we try to print out our variable, we realize that its value has changed. In fact, it has changed to the correct answer of 5 plus 3, which is of course 8. As you can imagine, if my function needs to return, say, 3 things, I could easily use this method and have the function sort of poke the correct answers into all the relevant variables, and that's how you could get all the answers back. So yeah, just a very interesting workaround that was popular in the C++ days. That's not to say people don't use C++ these days, but yeah, now with most programming languages, you have a little bit more freedom than this, and at the same time, you have a little bit less control than this, right? You couldn't just play with memory addresses like that, so you didn't really have a chance to do this. But that was something that is done, and when we look at it in terms of a low level, well, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, just an interesting look back into history on how we sort of had a little workaround in our programming languages. That's all there is for this particular episode. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, you're watching 0612 TV with NERDfirst.net. Thank you very much for watching. If you like my work and are feeling generous, you can shoot me a one-time donation on PayPal or sign up for a recurring one on Patreon. Of course, you can simply like, comment, and subscribe. You know the deal. For more videos, links to my channel and a related playlist are on screen. Thank you for your support.